Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
The glory of God moving through you and as you, as the song said. What does that feel like, that glory? Have you felt it before? Can you tap into that awareness of aliveness, of presence? That is what we're talking about tonight, living the awakened life, expressing the glory of God in and through and as you. So this is the completion of our series on A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I have just loved and treasured this book. Oprah Winfrey said that she keeps it on her bedside table and reads it over and over again, and I can just see how this is, I'm trying to remember when I read it before this series, but I know I've read it before, and just coming back to it again, it's like a whole new book. And there are just new insights, and there's so much richness and depth. So I'm glad that you've been with us on this journey through the book, and I hope that you continue to tap into these teachings, because there's so much there. Eckhart Tolle explains in the book that we are in a great cycle of the movement of the universe, that astronomers have evidence that the universe came into existence about 15 billion years ago, and there was a gigantic explosion, a big bang, that happened that caused from nothingness. There was this growth in complexity, there was more and more differentiation that came into being, and that scientists say that we've been expanding and differentiating and creating more complexity, and they see that there is, with noticing the way that physics works and the way that the universe is functioning, that there may be a contraction of the universe as well, back into less and less diversity in form and then back into the formless, and that it may continue into that cycle because that seems to be the nature of things, according to scientists and their research, that we may return into the unmanifested nothingness, pure spirit, which is what we know we are at the very source of our being. And so we continue on this cycle of birth and expansion, contraction, and death again and again and again. It's just part of the natural flow. The wonderful scientist, mathematician, Stephen Hawking, he said, "Why does the universe go through all the bother of existing?" And it seems like quite a lot, doesn't it? I couldn't even imagine how to get going on all the things that we have. Why does the universe bother? And so it's an interesting question, because science and math, they're not able to answer that type of a question, a why question. Why? When we look within, when we go to spirit, we recognize that our lives have both an inner purpose and an outer purpose, and that the universe also has an inner purpose and an outer purpose, and it is one with yours. There's no separation between the purpose of the universe and your purpose in life. That you are essential, that the universe wouldn't be the universe without you. You're intrinsic to the presence of the universe. But I'm sure you want to know what that is, right? What is that purpose that is yours and the universe's, inner and outer? Anybody interested? Yeah, okay, a little. Let's see. Well, so this purpose that journey we're on, the universe we're on, I'm going to tell you right away. The suspense, I should hold out the suspense a little more, but I'll share it with you. So there's the reconciliation of our outer purpose, which is our form, our creation, our doingness in the world, with our inner purpose, our beingness, which we also call our God nature, or God universally, right? God. So there is that coming together of both the outer, the doingness, the outer purpose, the work, our experiences, and the inner purpose coming together in harmony, that is what the universe is doing, and that is what we are doing collectively and individually. The fact that we think in separation and we live with thoughts of separation is only because of how the mind works, how our brain processes experiences. We cut it up into fragments because our brain can't hold the totality of all that it is. There just can't conceive of it all at once. So we break it up to make sense of it, but in truth, it is all whole. Reality is one wholeness. It's unified. So only the whole is really true, but the mind, just, I said, it can't comprehend it. That wholeness can't be spoken or thought, and even when we try to give a word to it, like God or spirit or oneness, well, those words have meaning too. God means typically, in the dictionary form, it means a male deity. Spirit, well, it can have other meanings, a Holy Spirit or a Trinity, and maybe just, so our minds can then attribute meaning, and then it becomes not a full, does it feel the full wholeness once we start to identify it through our human means, right? This was so interesting what Tole said, that all that has ever been and all that ever will be is only ever happening in the now. Can you even conceive of that? That all that happened and all that is going to happen is only ever happening. Like, it actually, not that, well, you're only experiencing it in the now. He says it's just an eternal now. Past and future are mental constructs. So that's something that it just gives me pause. Wow, I experience life with a past and a future. I don't know how I could not experience it that way, but I'm willing to recognize it all happening in this eternal now, and the mystery and wonder of that there's a reality that's really beyond my just mental constructs. In metaphysics, I teach metaphysics here at Unity. It's one of my favorite topics. We understand that life has two realms. There's the relative realm, which is changing and dependent upon the absolute realm. So the relative is our life experience, physical, the body, time, place, things we're doing, events, that sort of thing. And then there's what's also relative is our consciousness and our awareness of what's happening, the subconscious mind, which is the storehouse of our memories and such, as well as collective consciousness. So all that in the relative. And then there's the absolute, which is unchanging in terms of our unity understanding. It is formless and it is infinite. And that is, with the metaphor of the sun rising and setting, the relative is our experience of the sun rises and it sets. We have the morning and we see the light, it sets and it's dark and it's nighttime. In the absolute, the sun isn't doing that at all. It's not rising, it's not even moving around us. The earth is orbiting the sun, and the sun's always shining. And that's the absolute, that's God. The light is always shining. The light is always present. And it's our separation that sees light and dark. So how did we get to that experience of separation, of coming out of the formless, and coming into life? Suddenly you appear into the world. There's a sunrise, and there you are. Now you have a body and you're a baby, and you've been born. And a whole world exists in this one life that is you, that is your life. The universe is a microcosm in your life of the cycle of birth. Following your birth is an expansion where you're learning and growing and you're walking and you're talking and you're making connections with people and you're recognizing how to get things that you want, right? Your sphere of influence expands as you get older and your life becomes a lot more complex than the nursery and the crib and the high chair. Now you're out in the world and you're going to school and you've got after-school activities and gymnastics and Girl Scouts or whatever, Boy Scouts, soccer, Little League, all kinds of things happening as kids. And you continue to grow physically, and you go out into the world and you gain knowledge and you gain possessions, you start getting stuff and you accumulate more and more stuff, experiences, and your sphere of influence expands and life continues to become more complex and you become concerned about finding your outer purpose. What am I supposed to do with this life? What kind of work is mine to do? What am I supposed to be? How am I going to be known in the world? What kind of legacy will I leave in the world? And usually the ego becomes identified with the form of who you are, your status, your work, your position, the roles you play. And your identity becomes more and more defined. And then you want more and more. And this is the typical human experience. And what comes later in life, usually for most people, it can come earlier in life for people who experience traumatic events or injuries, accidents, or whatever, that the body will weaken. And it's, oh, my life is changing. Now, no longer am I able to be all this out here and do all this and have this big, big, grand thing. Now, the circle of influence contracts and people close to you die, and you become less instead of more. And your ego can react to that because it's like, wait a minute, I thought I had significance and purpose and people need me and now they don't need me so much. And many people go into anxiety and depression over this. And your consciousness experiences a sunset. And one day your form disappears. And where you sat in the chair in your home and read a book and meditated, and now that body's no longer there. And you went back to where you came from just a few years ago when you were born, and you were so excited for your presence on the earth. Eckhart Tolle tells us that this return movement, where you return into the formless, that movement is undervalued in our society. We hide death. You don't see dead bodies unless you go to a funeral home, and even then, they're embalmed, they've got makeup on and jewelry and the best outfit and cute hair, and they kind of look, wow, they're just sleeping. I did a funeral on Friday, and I kept looking, that person could breathe at any second. And she looked so much like she was just sleeping, but obviously not breathing. It was amazing. It was amazing how beautiful. And Eckhart Tolle tells us that this is our hiding of death, and what it does to us as a culture is that then we become unprepared for this disillusion of form that we're all destined to experience, which is eventually going to lead to death because we have a lack of exposure of it. Now, in ancient cultures, there was a lot more exposure to it, and there also was a great respect for elders because they recognized that these people were to be revered and respected, because when the form starts to decrease, the spirit tends to increase. And it's like a stained glass window where they just become radiant light and presence, and there's a lot less attachment to things and persona and who they were in the world. He says, what is lost on the level of form is gained on the level of essence. So if you feel that you've lost something on the level of form in your life, in whatever kind of way that may have shown up, that is gained in the form of essence. And there's an archetype called the blind seer. There's also the wounded healer, ancient archetypes that speak of those who've experienced great loss and how they become prophets and seers into the spiritual realm because they're so much more open, because they've broken that cycle of attachment to ego because of this contraction that happened in that experience that they had. Now, the ego can resist this change. It can resort, I mean, if you're like me, I know what that is. And change, get resentful and angry and annoyed and don't like it, self-pity, complaining. You get trapped in fear, guilt, blame. Or you can completely avoid the change by focusing on the past and talking about who you were and the work that you did and having all the pictures of your youth around and just kind of living in that for a while. But he says that those who live in that ego resistance, they're missing out on that gift of embodying the process of expansion and contraction and allowing the radiance of spirit to come forth. And it's interesting, and some people who say, why are there so many more older people in church? Well, what's wrong with that? They're open to spirit, right? They're in a stage in life, typically, according to what he's explaining here, where they are able to let go of that doingness more and more the beingness. And there are many of us, he says, now in the new earth that are awakening a lot earlier in life and coming into spiritual path a lot earlier, and perhaps that's you as well. And so this shift, he calls it a flowering of consciousness. I love that, flowering. There's this flowering of consciousness, and the weakened bodies become transparent to the light of the divine consciousness. But if we're not experiencing loss, we're not experiencing old age, then what as far as the next stage of our evolution or human evolution? And he says our next stage is what he calls awakened doing. Awakened doing. And so that's an alignment of your outer purpose, what you do, with your inner purpose, which is awakening and staying awake in what you're doing. And he gives us 3 different modalities for this awakened doing, 3 different ways of consciousness that allow you to flow in the world, to be in this awakened doing state of experiencing life and bringing forth the consciousness of a new earth. And the 3 that he shared surprised me because I thought that it was going to be something else. I don't know. Deep silence, peace, serenity, maybe something like that. But these are the 3. And he said that those who are living this way are what he calls the frequency holders of the earth, that they are holding this consciousness and helping to raise the vibration or consciousness and bringing forth this new earth. And so the 3, he says, that we can all do that allow us to be in awakened doing are acceptance and enjoyment and enthusiasm. They surprised me, those last 2, for sure. Enjoyment and enthusiasm, that was essential to the new earth. That sounds like fun. I didn't think it was going to be fun. I thought it'd be work. So it's fun. So he says if you're not using one of these, to consider your life and how you're showing up, that if you're not using acceptance, enjoyment, enthusiasm, at least one of those, that you're actually causing suffering to yourself and perhaps others in your life. Just take that in. And not having acceptance, enjoyment, enthusiasm, at least one of those, I'm causing suffering to myself and or others. So for acceptance, it's those situations where I recognize that this is what my life requires of me now, and I do it willingly, that I will be done and going forth and doing it. And for me, it's like doing taxes. Like I'm not enthusiastic and excited about it, but I know it needs to be done, and it's not worth resisting it because they need to get done. So you do it, you go through it, you get it done, you feel the satisfaction of the fulfillment of it being done. And he says that if you can't do this, at least accepting, if you can't be enthusiastic or enjoy, but if you can't accept what you're doing, then just stop it. So just stop it. You're causing suffering on the planet. Stop doing that. Because he says the one thing that's most important is your state of consciousness. So you just keep drudging through this thing that you hate. You're not being of any benefit to the earth, okay? He says, just stop it. Maybe you need to hire somebody else to do your taxes or whatever it is. That is the thing that is causing long-term aggravation. I love this because this is an essential unity teaching, and here it is. Our teachings are universal teachings, so no surprise it showed up here. He said, if you are not taking responsibility for your state of consciousness, you are not taking responsibility for your life. Read that in. You're not taking responsibility for your state of consciousness. You're not taking responsibility for your life. That's the creative energy of your life. The formless into the form. Acceptance, being willing to accepting what is. The key is being at peace while doing whatever it is that you're doing and not trudging through it with resentment and anger and bitterness or whatever. So, acceptance. Second, being enjoyment. Enjoyment. It connects you to the creative energy of the universe itself, that there is joy in creation. Look at spring. We have spring all around us. The flowers, that's fun. It's joyful. And he says that one of the most common delusions of our ego is that we have to wait to start living. That waiting. I think we did a lot of that in the pandemic. We're just like, okay, we've got to get this thing over, and then we can go and have a life. But, got to stay home. Oh, this is horrible. We're on lockdown, masks. And there was this repressed joy that the relief for many people that came with the vaccination, and then we can start living again, get permission to go out and have some joy. He says enjoyment is really a choice, and so remembering that we can bring joy to whatever we're doing by choice, and that can help us to rethink different things we're doing in life and how can we make it more fun? Because when we're in joy, naturally arises from spirit. You're in the flow of life, of the world within you. Many people have frustration in their lives because they look out into the world to give them joy. Well, that person should be doing this or saying this or being like this. They're not, so I'm not going to be happy. Or that event or that whatever. Something is going to show up, and not recognizing that it begins within, and that when you bring the joy, that makes life joyful, and life can't do that to you. It arises. There's this song that we used to sing when I was a singer at Unity Village Chapel that I love. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. This joy, the joy that arises from within, that's what we're talking about, enjoyment. So he suggests that we make a list of all the things we find tedious and annoying and boring. Doing the laundry, or washing dishes, or driving in Houston traffic, or whatever that is. Make a list of those, and then commit to making them enjoyable. And the way to do that, he says, is to bring your presence to it. So rather than trying to bring yourself out of it or think about other things or resist it, whatever, just really be present. And when you're really present in washing the dishes, the joy will naturally arise, or doing the laundry, or making a commitment to be present and allow that joy to bubble up in your being and to arise and to have an experience of being in that rather than, the doingness of it and let's get through this thing. And so the third one is enthusiasm. He says enthusiasm means there's a deep enjoyment in what you do, plus the added element of a goal or a vision that you're working toward. So the joy is connected with a greater purpose to what you're doing that brings out this enthusiasm. I had a mentor in ministerial school, a minister who told me that you know you're on your right path in the work that yours to do if as you do it, your enthusiasm grows. If your enthusiasm is growing as you're learning and interning and going out and trying it, that's a sign that you're doing your right work. And to note that, to notice that. Emerson said, nothing great has ever been achieved without enthusiasm. In Unity, we call enthusiasm our power of zeal, that it's an essential part of our Christ nature. It's one of our spiritual faculties of zeal, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm and the ego, Tolle says, cannot coexist. I thought that was interesting. They can't coexist because enthusiasm is deeply at one with the present moment. So when you're in that zeal, you're totally in the zone and in the moment. Acceptance, enjoyment, enthusiasm. I'll close with this from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And I know when I was little, I thought, shy people inherit the earth? What? I'm not getting it, but I don't think I got a lot of things in the Bible when I was little, so that was okay. In modern versions of the Bible, this word, meek, is translated as humble. Blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the earth. So who are the humble or the meek of the earth? And Tolle tells us that those people are those who are living in an ego-less state. They're living in an awakened way. They're living in acceptance and enjoyment and enthusiasm, that they've awakened to their true nature and they recognize the oneness of all life and that they are an intrinsic part of that oneness. They embody that awakened consciousness of oneness. So this is the new earth that this whole series has been leading us up into, and we can hold that in our awareness and know that there is that aspect of us, the spirit of us that is always awakened and present and being. And as we bring that inner purpose into our outer purpose, and we bring those into alignment, we are creating a new earth for each other, for the world. So go forth and create it with us. Namaste.
Reverend Jeanmarie. That was a great way to wrap up our series. It's been kind of exciting. I really loved the three personality types, or how would we say it, behaviors?
He called it modalities of living.
Modes of living.
Yeah,
right. So acceptance, and that we can bobble between them. It's not like we make a commitment to one or another, right? I like that. And, and considering that, what I was kind of really attracted to the last one, the enthusiasm, because it's so childlike, it's like, it's the, oh gosh, the word just disappeared. When someone is new at things and not really skilled and doesn't have the education, doesn't know, but sees it and wants to do it, and I identify with that. That's in me. That's really something in softball. I was the most enthusiastic team player. They had to put me on the field. They had to put me somewhere just so I could chatter. And just so, I was no good, but I would, I'm left-handed, so I would throw the ball, and I threw it really hard so I could throw it all the way to first base. The trouble was, in my enthusiasm, I would miss it. I would just like wild pitch, wild throw, or sometimes right on it, but it was not very dependable. But I was so enthusiastic, they wanted it. And there's something endearing about that, and there's something that everyone draws from. And so the people with talent, I think I helped energize that. I was a team player, and to the credit of my coaches, they made me feel that way. I did not feel less than because I was the team bunter, you know, for instance. I also couldn't hit. So, I mean, like I had no real talent, but a lot of enthusiasm. So I just think it's a childhood, I mean, there's something childlike about that. The always learning, always open, right? And I think we're all there at different places at different times. So we can all drop into these three things, right?
Yeah. And you want people like that on your team, don't you? Those people who are excited about what's happening, even if they're not experts.
You only want one of them, though.
Maybe one. Maybe one, yeah. Who can remind you of what's so great about what you're doing when you're deep in it and you're in the tediousness of it.
You're the quintessential inspiration for everybody gets a trophy. Yes. You know, as you were telling the story about the three modalities, I was thinking about the story that is familiar, I'm sure, to many of us, about the Three Bricklayers. First man is sweating and working hard and really determined about his effort, and someone comes along and says, well, what are you doing there? And he says, well, I'm laying these bricks. And then the next guy seems to be taking some pride in his work. You know, he's getting them lined up just so, and it looks great. And he's sweating also, but he's definitely much more invested. And, well, what are you doing, sir? I'm building a wall. And he's into it. And then the last man has the touch of an artist, you know, and there's very little mess around his space, and every brick is just impeccably aligned, and he's fairly efficient with the way he uses his energy, and he's moving fairly quickly, and it just is a work of art to watch him, and the product is just stunning. And he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm building a cathedral. And I think that we all sort of fall into those modalities. You know, I don't disagree with you about the enthusiasm being almost childlike, but I think of them a bit hierarchically, not with judgment either, you know, because sometimes, you know, getting to acceptance is an elevation, you know, and it's just fine. And it can keep us healthy and alive another day. And then the same activity the next day can become enjoyable. And then, and I'm not even sure if we can control all the circumstances by which that same activity becomes something we do enthusiastically. I think it's a matter of our spiritual practice.
One of my teachers in ministerial school taught homiletics, which is the art of giving sermons. He guided us by saying, before you give a sermon, like before the service starts, say to yourself, this is fun. This is fun, and it can be fun. And that has helped me throughout doing this work, is remembering that, oh yeah, I don't have to get so serious and intense about it and the significance of it, and let there be some flow there.
Yeah, I will tell you this. In the early part of your talk, when we were at the outer space perspective, you know, and by the way, I want to kindly acknowledge that you never really answered the question that Stephen Hawking posed, is why does the universe bother to exist? Ultimately, it's some version of what is the meaning of life. You know, we're going to watch The Life of Brian next week. No, I'm kidding. It's you know, it's sort of like, what is the meaning of life? And I remember as a young man stumbling on the question and just thinking, wow, what a profound question. And it's ultimately a meaningless question. You know, you can live in that question forever and just end up going in circles. And when I think that big, often, as the dialogue continues, I begin to reflect on what Mother Teresa and what St. Francis of Assisi did. They relinquished everything. They only owned well, in the case of St. Francis, he only owned his robe. Mother Teresa was given beautiful facilities in downtown San Francisco. The first thing she had the sisters do is to remove the carpet and throw it out the window. They wanted to sleep on the floor, the wooden floor. And the purpose was to simplify to a degree that they could then only be of service. And I get humbled by that and feel a little bit guilty, and then I continue to, wash my clothes and eat really good food. And I just kind of grapple with that occasionally. And where I find peace is if I allow myself to recognize that that's my job. I was born into a certain station. I have a vessel that I walk around in. I was raised in a certain way. My circumstances unfolded in a certain way. I dance with those circumstances. I have the fruits of that quality of life, and my life matters, and I am part of a much larger context. And I don't even need to know what that is. I just need to know that it is. And that keeps me in the game. It keeps me, and I feel somewhat useful most of the time.
Well, one of the answers that I've heard to that question of why does the universe bother to exist is that God wanted to experience itself, and the only way was to come into separation and form so it could experience itself.
I'm still pondering the three modalities, meaning those are ways, ways of expression. Really, they are ways into the world, right? From the inner purpose to the outer purpose to expression. And I'm just contemplating, how it is that really the essence that we do, the acceptance and the enjoyment and the enthusiasm really comes from the love within. The power of love is, how would I say it? It opens the portal. It relaxes and expands. It is always expansive. So acceptance is an act of expansion. It is, to constrict is to resist. So it's always an action of expansion. Enjoyment, same thing, right? It's like you can't go, I'm just going to enjoy this one piece, just this one tiny piece, and I'm not having any more, It's like, no, you're just like, oh, I've got a video I'm going to show you sometime of my granddaughter. She was taking something and she videoed herself, and she decided she was going to show how much she enjoyed it, and she goes, I mean, just like, I was like, what is that? And it's just like, You're
saying she is her grandmother's granddaughter.
I was like, that's so brilliant. How did you think of that? And so it's like, it is exactly that, but it's love, right? It's love. And enthusiasm, I mean, it's the love of the possibility. It's the excitement of being able to bring our own essence. That's it, our essence out into the world. I mean, I really think that's his whole thing, is that, we just have to open up the imprisoned splendor and let it go have fun, just like let it be out there, let it play, and enjoy our lives, and like you said, not take it seriously. And I've done the very same thing in that room when this was still our main sanctuary. And I remember how tortured I would feel until I came out here. And then I would see everybody, and I go, oh, it's you guys. And then I would go, we're going to have such fun. This is going to be so fun. And then it could happen. And then I could deliver it, It was like, it was in me. It was in my head. I was stuck. It wasn't out here, It's so fascinating.
I love that it shows up like choice. Whether it's acceptance, enjoyment, or enthusiasm, it's like, I have agency in this. I'm not accepting it, and I'm noticing that I'm not accepting it, and I no longer give myself permission to live in that space. I therefore accept it. It is that simple, honest to God. Now, of course, there is a matter of scale. Sometimes you have to suffer a little bit in order to come to that place, but not too often. Once you realize you're not accepting something, just accept it.
So this is the awakened life, right? Mm-hmm. This is how we live it.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.